So I'm going to make a comparison that you might think is crazy, but just hear me out on this. I made this comparison yesterday on the Rational Boomer podcast. Now, if you're not listening to the Rational Boomer podcast, you should. There's a link in my profile. It's on Spotify, it's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Amazon Prime, whatever. It's real easy to find. I do a show every day. The least you could do is stop by once a week. So if you're not listening already, give it a shot. See what you think. Anyway, on to the comparison. My wife and I were away in Georgia this past week, and at night we'd sit down and wanted to binge something. So we watched the Jeffrey Dahmer series on Netflix. Now, we all know the story. We all know what happened in the end. We all know it ended with a happy ending because Jeffrey Dahmer was bludgeoned to death in fucking jail. But we know the story. But as I sit there watching this show, I just fucking hate it. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a good show and it's well acted and all that, but something about the show just pissed me off every time I watched it. And I couldn't figure out what it was. And then toward the end, I got it. You see, we have this monster, Jeffrey Dahmer, from the time he's a child to the time he goes to prison. This guy had more red flags than you could possibly fucking imagine. Killing animals, doing autopsies on animals, sexually assaulting people, indecent exposure, drugging people. These are all red flags, but every time something like that happened, either a police officer, a judge, his parents, his family somehow said, well, Jeffrey, this could be my wit's end. This might be the straw that broke the camel's back, but it never was. They kept enabling this fuck. They kept giving him an out. They kept bailing him out. And what do we end up in the end? A fucking monster that kills, brutalizes, and cannibalizes human fucking beings. And then I realized what's really pissing me off, because this is basically the same story for Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump didn't end up being a serial killer, at least as far as we know, but all his life he's been enabled, bailed out, helped. He's failed over and over and over again like Jeffrey Dahmer, but he still gets boosted up the way. So the fact that Donald Trump turned out the way he fucking is should not be a surprise to anybody. He was a spoiled child, and he's grown into a treasonous fucking monster.